Hello student, today we are going to see our prose section, and in that section we started our lesson 1.5 Mrs. Addis, and we come to know that Mrs. Addis, who is very much thin woman, who is the peasant woman, who is just 42 years old, and she living very hard life. That region is the Sussex region, and in that agricultural region she works very hard. And now Peter Crouch, who is coming to her cottage, he wants to stay there for some time, and he tells Mrs. Addis that he just shoot one man, and that's why he came here. He wants nobody could hear, or he wants nobody could see him, and so he come to Tom's home. And at that time Mrs. Addis asked him that where will you go after this night. At that time he just saying that I have no idea about that. He also saying to Mrs. Addis that you are very good woman. For the Tom's sake, you must allow me to stay in your home. And he again quote one sentence. He again said to Mrs. Addis that if I would have such a mother like you, if I would have such a mother like Tom's mother, then I would be different. की मी सुद्धा वेगळा झालो असतो, मी सुद्धा टॉम सारखा गुड नेचर्ड झाला असतो. अँड ही रिअलाइज दॅट ही never grown up in the good culture, and that's why he just choosing the way of crime. He just choosing the bad way. And he said to Mrs. Addis that Tom had very good mother, and so Tom's becomes good nature, and if I would have such a mother, then I would be the different one. I would be like the Tom. Let us see the next page number 46. She did not, second last paragraph, she did not speak but shut the door, and he was in darkness save for a small rays of light that comes through one of the cracks. And at that time she never saying anything, she never commented anything, and she just shut the door. She went into the kitchen, she shut the door. He was in the darkness save for a small ray of light that comes through one of the cracks. And in that shade there is the darkness. Only from one crack of that door some light comes from that door, just like a ray of light comes from that door, and he just sitting in that shade. By this light he could see her moving to and fro, and with that light, when he see towards the kitchen, that time he just seeing Mrs. Addis doing her work to and fro, preparing Tom's supper. She just preparing Tom's dinner, and in another hour Tom would be home from Iron Latch farm, where he work every day. And in another hour means after 1 hour, there would be the Tom arrived in the home. There would be Tom's coming in the home, and Tom, for the whole day Tom work in the Iron Latch फार्म. आयर्न लॅच फार्म एक तिथे आहे, आणि तिथे तो दिवसभर काम करत असतो. टॉम वुड बी इन अनदर आवर टॉम वुड बी होम फ्रॉम आयर्न लॅच farm, where he worked every day. Peter Crouch trusted Tom to help him, and Peter Crouch know that Tom is very good natured person, and Tom will be help him. So he ट्रस्टेड, की त्याचा विश्वास होता की टॉम निश्चित त्याला मदत करणार आहे. फॉर दे हॅड बीन फ्रेंड्स वेन दे वेंट टुगेदर टू द नॅशनल स्कूल ॲट लंबरहर्स्ट, and since then the friendship had not been broken by their very different characters and careers. Even though their characters are different, even though their careers are different, but their friendship had not broken. They went together to the national school at Lumberhurst, that is they going to the Lumbus host. They was in one class, and he know that Tom is very good natured person, and he trusted on him that he will help him. Peter Crouch huddled down upon the sacks that filled one corner of the shed. And at that time Peter Crouch huddled down means shrink oneself. He just shrinking his own self, and he just sitting in one corner, huddle down upon the sacks. There are so many sacks, and on that sacks he just sitting with the shrinking की तो असा वेटोळ करून बसलेला आहे. A delicious smell of cooking began to come through from the kitchen, and Mrs. Addis she doing supper for the Tom, and so there is delicious smell coming from the kitchen, and he hoped Mrs. Addis would not deny him a share of the supper when Tom came home, for he was very hungry and he had a long way to go. And he was at that time he was very hungry, and he would know that Tom's mother is very good natured, and she also offered him the dinner. She also said to the Peter Crouch that you also shared some dinner with the Tom. And so he was very hungry and he had a long way to go, and he decided that he just leave that place. And so at that time he was hungry, and if he get any meal then he would go for the long journey. That is the way was very long to go. He had fallen into a kind of helpless does, and now how he was seeing that he was very much helpless at that time की तो खूप helpless झालेला होता. When he was roused by the sound of footstep on the road, and when he heard some sounds of footstep on the road, at that time for a moment his poor heart nearly choked him with its beating, and his heart is going to be beating when he heard some sound from the nearby road, when he heard some footstep from the nearby road. At that time his heart nearly choked him with its beating, means his heart is going to be beat. At that time there were the keepers, and he knows that the keepers are follows him. There were the keepers. They had guessed where he was, and the keepers also had guessed that where he was with Mrs. Addis, his old friend's mother. And keepers also have some guesses that maybe this Peter Crouch is went to the Mrs. Addis cottage, because Mrs. Addis, who is his Mrs. Addis, who is his friend's mother, who is the Tom's mother, and they also guesses that maybe Peter Crouch is in Mrs. Addis' home. So nearly losing his self-control, he shrank into the corner, shivering. And when he heard the footstep, when he had such a thought like that, the keepers may be coming to Mrs. Addis' home, and they just asking about myself, they just are inquiring about myself, and they also have some guessing that is maybe Peter Crouch is in Mrs. Addis' home, because Mrs. Addis, who is the friend of Tom, who is the Tom's mother, means Peter Crouch friend is Tom, and she is the Tom's mother. And so nearly losing his self-control, he shrank into one corner. आणि काय तर तो स्वतःचं सेल्फ कंट्रोल लूज करतो ॲट दॅट टाईम. ही जस्ट लूजिंग हिज सेल्फ कंट्रोल अँड श्रँक into the corner, shivering, half sobbing. And at that time he just shivering, half sobbing. That is he have the sense of scaring. At that time he going to be very much frightened, because because if the keepers came there, and if the keepers inquire about myself, then maybe Mrs. Addis just handed over to me, की जर असं काही झालं आणि त्यावेळेस मिसेस ॲडिसनी जर मला त्यांच्या ताब्यात दिलं तर इट मे बी हॅपन्स. सो देर इज शिवरिंग, देर इज हाफ सॉबिंग, ही जस्ट लूज हिज सेल्फ कंट्रोल, ही श्रँक इन टू द कॉर्नर अँड ऑल सच थिंग्स is done at that time. The next minute, Mrs. Addis stuck her head into the shade, and in the next minute, what happens that Mrs. Addis come into the shade. She just stuck her head into the shade. That was the keepers, she said shortly, and she just giving information that was the keepers. She said shortly, I saw them go by and now they go from my place. I saw them go by. They had lanterns in their hand. They had lanterns की त्यांच्या हातात कंदील आहे. They had lanterns with their hands. Maybe it would be better if you slip out now and went towards Cassiron. Canciron. That is, she said to Peter Crouch that you just slip out from this place. You just escape from this place because maybe it would be better. It would be better for you and for me also that you just escape from this place. You just slip out from this place and went towards Canciron, and you just go to the Canciron. Canciron means name of a town where there is रेल्वे स्टेशन की कॅन्सिरॉन नावाचं एक प्लेस आहे की जिथे रेल्वे स्टेशन आहे. आणि शी said to Peter Crouch that you just slip out from this place. It will be better for you and for me that I know that in on the road there are keepers. Now they just go by, but it will be but they will come again की ते पुन्हा सुद्धा येऊ शकतात. So you just slip from this place. You would miss them that way and get over to Kent, and you would miss them that way and get over to Kent की तू कुठल्या केंटच्या रस्त्याने जा, तू त्यांना हुलकावणी दे, and you just slip from this place. There is a London train that comes from Tunbridge Wells at 10 tonight, and at 10 p.m. there will be London train, and it comes from the Tunbridge की टर्नब्रिजवरून येणारी जी ट्रेन आहे जी लंडनला जाणारी आहे की जी रात्री 10 वाजता येते. तर यू जस्ट caught that train and you slip out from this place. That's be a fine thing for me, ma'am, but I haven't the price of a ticket on me. And Peter Crouch said to Mrs. Addis that this will be very much good for me. This will be very much fine thing for me that went to the London, but I haven't the price of the ticket on me. परंतु माझ्याकडे तिकिटाचे कुठलेही पैसे नाही आहेत. She went to one of the kitchen drawer, and at that time she just went to one of the kitchen drawer. Here is 7 shillings and here is 7 shilling. It will be your fare to London and a bit over. आणि काय तर हे जे 7 शिलिंग्ज आहेत तर हे तुमचं लंडनचं फेअर, यातून तू लंडनचं तिकीट तू देऊ शकशील आणि थोडेसे तुला पैसेसुद्धा वरती राहतील. दॅट इज इट विल बी युअर फेअर टू लंडन अँड अ बीट ओव्हर. आणि तुला आणखीनही थोडेसे पैसे राहतील. फॉर अ मोमेंट ही डिड नॉट स्पीक. देन ही सेड, आय डोंट नो हाऊ टू थँक यू मॅम. अँड फॉर अ मोमेंट ही डिड नॉट स्पीक की थोडा वेळ तो काहीच बोलला नाही. बट देन I don't know how to thank you, ma'am. And then he said that how to thank you, ma'am, that you having a lot of favor on me. That is, no, oh, you needn't thank me. I am doing it for Tom. And she sent to Peter Crouch that I am doing all such things only because of the Tom. I just doing all such things only Tom's sake, and you needn't thank me. That is for my sons, for the sake of my son, I just doing all such thing. I hope you wouldn't get into trouble because of this. की मला असं वाटतं की यू वोंट गेट इन टू ट्रबल बिकॉज ऑफ धिस, की टॉममुळे तू ट्रबलमध्ये यावं असं मला काही वाटत नाही आहे. देअर इजंट मच फिअर, नो once ever likely to know you have been in this cottage. की there isn't much fear, की आता फारशी भीती नाही आहे. नो वन एव्हर लाईकली टू नो यू हॅव बीन इन द कॉटेज, आणि तू या कॉटेजमध्ये आहेस हे कोणालाही कळणार नाही. दॅट्स वाय आय वुड सूनर यू वेंट बिफोर टॉम कम बॅक, फॉर मे बी ही हॅड ब्रिंग अ फ्रेंड विथ हिम अँड दॅट्स मेक trouble. And she said to Peter Crouch that if the Toms come, if Tom bring one of his friend, then it will be trouble for you, that you can't release from this home, you can't release from this place, and so it would be better if you now slip from this place, if you now escape from this place, or if you leave this place, it will be very better. And for your sake I just telling all such things, because if the Tom will come, if he had bring one of friend, if he will have bring any friend with him, then it will be trouble for you. She opened the door for him, but on the threshold they both stood still, for again footsteps could be heard approaching, this time from the far south. And when they both ready, that is Peter Crouch is ready for leaving that place, and so Mrs. Addis and Peter Crouch, they come into the kitchen. At that time they just stand still, की ते पुन्हा एकदा जशाला तसे उभे राहिले. Why? Because they heard some footsteps and some persons may be arriving. They heard the footsteps of some persons, and this time from the far south, की दक्षिणेकडच्या भागातून त्यांना फुटस्टेप ऐकायला यायला लागले होते. आणि फुटस्टेप ऐकायला आल्यामुळे दे जस्ट स्टँड स्टिल, की ते तिथेच दे जस्ट स्टूड स्टिल दॅर, बिकॉज दे हर्ड सम persons approaching. They heard the footstep of some persons, and they heard this footstep from the far south. Maybe it's Tom, said Mrs. Addis. And maybe this footstep of the Tom, said Mrs. Addis. There is more than one man there. I can hear voices. आणि मला वाटतं टॉम आलेला असेल. टॉम बरोबर आणखीनही कोणीतरी दिसतंय. आय हर्ड मेनी व्हॉइसेस, की मला जास्त जणांचे आवाज ऐकू येत आहेत. आय कॅन हिअर मेनी व्हॉइसेस. यू वुड बी बेटर गो बॅक, शी सेड शॉर्टली. अँड अगेन she said to the Peter Crouch that you would be better go back, she said shortly. Wait till they have passed anyway. And she said to Peter Crouch that wait till they have passed anyway, की जोपर्यंत इथून जात नाही तोपर्यंत you just wait in the shed, you just go back to the kitchen, you just go to the shed and you just wait till they passed anyway, till they pass anyway. That with an unwilling shrug he went back into the little dusty shed. With an unwilling shrug means he just shrugged his shoulder, की नाखुशीने, की त्याने त्याचे खांदे उडवले. अँड नाव ही वॉज हेल्पलेस, की तो खूप हेल्पलेस आहे. अँड ही जस्ट unwillingly shrugged. He went back into the little dusty shed which he had come to hate, and she locked the door upon him. And again he go back into that shed which he had come to hate, की त्याला आता तिथे नकोसं वाटत होतं, त्याला तिथे जायला नको वाटत होतं. And she locked the door upon him, and she just locked the door. The footsteps drew nearer. They came slowly and heavily this time. For a moment he thought they would pass also. but their momentary dulling was only the crossing of the strip of grass outside the door. The next minute there was a knock. It was not Tom then. Means the footstep drew nearer, की हळूहळू पावलांचा आवाज पुढे पुढे येऊ लागला. दे केम स्लोली, की खूप हळूवार ते येत होते, की कुठलीही गडबड नव्हती त्यांच्याकडे. अँड हेविली दिस टाईम, अँड धिस फुटस्टेप, की हिअर आवर रायटर जस्ट डिस्क्राईब द फुटस्टेप ऑफ द पर्सन, दॅट इज, की ते फुटस्टेप कसे होते तर खूप जड पावलांनी तिथे लोक येत होते, हळूहळू लोक येत होते. फॉर अ मोमेंट ही थॉट दे वुड पास ऑल्सो, की थोडा वेळ त्याला वाटलं की इथून पुढे जातील, निघून जातील, की थांबणार नाहीत तिथे. बट दे आर मोमेंटरी डलिंग, की काही काळासाठी. मोमेंटरी डलिंग म्हणजे काय तर फॉर अ ब्रीफ पिरियड ऑफ टाईम, की थोडा वेळ ते तिथेच तसे स्तब्ध झाले. बट दॅर मोमेंटरी डलिंग वॉज ओनली द क्रॉसिंग द स्ट्रीप ऑफ अ ग्रास आउटसाइड द डोअर. आणि तिच्या घरासमोर जो गवताचा पट्टा होता, दे जस्ट स्टँड देअर ॲट first. They just crossing the strip of a grass outside the door, and the next minute, की पुढच्या मिनिटाला, there was a knock. There was not Tom then. आणि तिच्या दरवाजावर तिथे नॉकिंग झालेलं होतं. जर टॉम असतं तर टॉमने नॉकिंग केलं नसतं. ही जस्ट कम इनसाइड द होम, बट दॅर इज द नॉकिंग, अँड सो देर वॉज नॉट अ टॉम. It was not Tom then. Trembling with anxiety and curiosity, Peter Crouch put his eye on one of the numerous cracks in the door and looked through into the kitchen. आणि ट्रेमलिंग विथ एन्झायटी, की थोडंसं त्याला थरथर कापत होता तो. एन्झायटी होती, त्याला चिंता होती. अँड क्युरिओसिटी, की आता कोण आलेलं असेल, थोडीशी उत्सुकता पण होती. हू विल कम टू मिसेस ॲडीज होम, टू मिसेस ॲडीज कॉटेज. अँड सो Peter Crouch put his eye to one of the numerous cracks in the door and looked through into the kitchen. आणि putting his eye, की तो डोळे लावून बसला, की त्या दरवाजाला जे क्रॅक्स होते त्या क्रॅक्समधून जो प्रकाश येत होता त्यातून त्याला पलीकडचे पाहता येत होतं. अँड सो ही जस्ट पुट हिज आय to one of the numerous crack in the door and looked through into the kitchen. आणि काय तर तो किचनमधून पाहू लागला. He saw Mrs. Addis go to cottage door, but before she could open it, a man came in quickly and shut it behind him. की ती पुढे जाणार दरवाजा उघडायला, तोपर्यंतच वन मॅन कम इनसाइड अँड ही जस्ट shutting the door. That is, one man came in quickly, की एक माणूस पटकन आतमध्ये आला. अँड शट इट बिहाइंड हिम, की त्याने काय केलं तर पटकन तो दरवाजा लावून घेतला. इन दिस वे वी विल सी सम पार्ट ऑफ द लेसन मिसेस ॲडीज. वी विल सी द नेक्स्ट पार्ट इन अवर नेक्स्ट लेसन. थँक्यू.